Chelsea got away from the Bernabeu with a 2-0, well, I wouldn't say result, it was a 2-0 loss to Real Madrid. But in many ways, that is a result. And I was weirdly sort of excited when I wanted to make this video tonight. Not because, you want to put the boot in on Frank Lampard or you want to say this Chelsea team isn't doing particularly well, but because I actually thought there was a result to be had here this evening. And I think there is generally sort of a better feeling around the club since Potter left. Not because Potter left, but because Chelsea felt like they were sort of getting some form of control back over the club. Now, with that, there is a lot to unpack, especially as Frank Lampard is now helming the team instead of someone like, say, a Graham Potter or a Nagelsmann or just anyone out there who is considered to be one of the elite managers or one of the aspiring elite managers or one of the managers that wants to be in the elite and possibly had a ceiling of that. You get what I'm saying? But a 2-0 down to 10 men isn't actually such a bad result at the Bernabeu. It takes them back to Stamford Bridge on a very good footing, even if it is without Ben Chilwell. Now, before we unpack any more, if you guys haven't already hit subscribe by the end of the video, I would have convinced you that you want to hit subscribe, whether you're a Chelsea fan or someone else. I'd love you to join us on our journey to 100k. And if you guys want to be part of the community, I'll be down in the comments after this, chatting to people, letting you guys know what I think. But I'm also interested to know what Chelsea fans think. The phrase that popped into my head when they first finished this game was one thing: walk before you can run. Seems that a lot of clubs in Europe recently, especially in trying to supercharge things, have been trying to walk before they can run. Chelsea seem like they're one of them. And just buying big players is not the best way to fix that, right? I mean, it was one of the ways to fix it. It's one of the ways to address the issues. But again, you have to work up momentum with these kind of things. Walk before you can run. In the back line, this month already, Chelsea have conceded 5 goals. That's 2 more goals than they conceded in the whole of the last month before that. Now, that's the Statman Dave stat, but still, don't have a go at me here. It's a very good point. Chelsea were much more defensively solid, and it's not like they've fixed their attack in order to sacrifice the defence. So are we finding out a few more things about this Chelsea side overall now that Frank Lampard is like the anti-environment to Graham Potter? He's not quite got them walking before they can run, but he was expected to sprint against Real Madrid, and that's part of the problem here. He was never going to be able to get the team up. Even if you wanted to get them up to top speed, you wanted them to be, a new manager bounce side against Real Madrid, I would have argued that Graham Potter would actually have put them in a better position, at least in the short to medium term, to actually do something against Real Madrid. Now, maybe the players didn't believe, maybe there was an element of the club wanted to get rid of him and all these kind of things. But you can't tell me that result tonight is really that different under Graham Potter. If anything, you kind of think that Potter would have actually had some sort of I want to put it like a big game plot, a big game plan, which it didn't really feel like Frank Lampard had. I know that counter-attacking is one thing, and you could clearly see the runners trying to overwhelm that back line of Real Madrid when Real Madrid were pushed up super high. In fact, it looked like quite an interesting way that a lot of people have tried to play Liverpool at different times. If you're trying to break down a dominant side, you want to do that kind of thing, right? And you want to exploit the fullbacks where the space is. You also want to try and have quick passing that gets beyond everything else. But again, walk before you can run. This team is barely scoring goals at the moment anyway. So on top of that, you want to then put them with complex attacking systems. It barely looked like they had any sort of combinations in them. And though Real Madrid actually looked very flat themselves, didn't really look like they ever had to do all that much. The goals came super easy to them. And that must be very frustrating to Frank Lampard. The goals, really were kind of either Chelsea mistakes, Chelsea sitting off, or Chelsea sort of being slightly unlucky. But Real Madrid never really looked like they were struggling all that much with Chelsea. I get it. People will be saying in the comments, hey, they had X amount of shots. They were actually as good as, there are good comparable stats between them and Real Madrid. Real Madrid have been pretty poor at the Bernabeu recently. In fact, in the last month, they've lost twice there. So this was a good opportunity for Chelsea to land a punch. And in many ways, a 2-0 is a good punch on Real Madrid. Even if it is a very light tap, or even just a little, hey, I'm just going to tap you. Yeah, just a little, tap, tap, tap. And then Chilwell obviously he got caught out of position. He pretty much had a decision to make there, made the decision. It's not great because I actually like Chilwell for the width that he adds. I love the intelligence that he brings. I think he is probably one of the better Chelsea players right now, of the Chelsea players that at least you know what his position is. On the opposite side, Reece James has been inconsistent recently in terms of his playing time, but when he has actually played, I've seen him as one of the more consistent outlets, should we say, for Chelsea, even if they haven't actually scored all that many. But that's been a problem with Chelsea for a while, whether Reece James has been in the squad or not. So there are bigger issues here to address that it doesn't yet seem like Frank Lampard is quite doing, at least consistently. But how can you expect him to do that when he doesn't have an option that he can actually do that with? Tonight, he started with Felix through the middle. You've then got Kai Havertz, and you've then got someone like Raheem Sterling, three very experienced players. João Felix go through very early. But again, it never felt like they had full control on this game. Real Madrid never really looked all that troubled. Toni Kroos came off late. There was really a lot of interesting, calm subs from Carlo Ancelotti. And let's be honest, this walk before you can run kind of has some legs on it, right? Literally, and also figuratively speaking. This Chelsea team need to put a basis down they can build from. Now, I don't want to be overcritical of Frank Lampard because I think he does deserve some credit for coming in and returning and doing all these things. I think every manager who puts themselves in a spot like this deserves some credit for that, even if they will get mocked at some point. That's kind of part of the job at this point. But anyway, there were some confusing decisions in there, and I would say one of them was the substitutes in the second half, where they brought on a Gallagher and a Mount and these kind of guys. I guess sometimes offense is the best form of defense, some people say. But at the same time, there was also just simple things that maybe a new manager who's coming in should kind of be encouraging his players to do. You know, like there are players turning their back on the play where the second goal came from. There are players who are not quite switched on during set pieces. All these things are kind of basics that you sort of want your players to be doing. Now, maybe the players are just demoralised to a certain degree, but there is an element of professionalism here they kind of need to enact. And I'm not quite sure why it isn't happening because these are simple things. You would hope that a coach like Frank Lampard, who is still up and coming, gets the basics done at any club. Because these ABCs, the 1, 2, 3s, maybe they're being assumed the players doing them because Lampard has such high standards, but they weren't doing them. So getting out of there, they're almost fortunate to get away with the 2-0 loss because there were a lot of basics that they just weren't doing. They do a lot of cute stuff and they do a lot of the broad stuff. Maybe that's what Lampard has been working on. But you've got to send your players out with at least an element of, hey, get on post, you know, always be facing there are just basics that people do in Sunday and Saturday League here. There is a basis of energy from the midfield with someone like Enzo Fernandez. There are clearly some progressing centre-backs in there. I don't know if Kepa's the long-term guy, but we'll see. And up front, they just do need a striker. They need someone that can base this whole thing around because as much as I love the pace they've got, as much as I love the industry and the effort that they're putting in, it just isn't really striking me as all that effective right now. Now, what is interesting is Chelsea can actually learn something from Real Madrid time after time after time. In fact, Real Madrid invested in Galacticos for years. They won very little, well, or at least less than you would have thought they should have won with that Galactico idea. And that possibly has some ramifications for Chelsea, or at least some sort of lessons, should we say. The ramifications aren't literal, the lessons that Chelsea are going to have, right? You can't just buy big players and expect them to play well under any manager. You need a manager they will respect and is going to be able to organise them. I totally get that. That's something that I think was kind of logical, right? But on top of that, you also need players that are invested in your project. People who actually want to be there. People who aren't just going there because you paid more than another club. You have to aspire to be at Chelsea. So convincing people like Mason Mount, Chilwell, Reece James, even the big people in the back line like a Thiago, and now maybe even someone like a Sterling or someone up front like maybe Kai Havertz isn't the option you put there, but maybe a Broja, someone like that. And then in the midfield, you've got your Enzos. You get what I'm saying? There needs to be a spine here. They don't quite have that yet. I know that Frank Lampard will have been disappointed with the result. I know most Chelsea fans will have been disappointed with the result. But within that, you're taking something back that you can battle against. You have less than a week to do it. In fact, you have 6 days to do it. It's Wednesday to Tuesday with which Premier League game in between that, right? But there is something here that you can sort of build on. Real Madrid are still vulnerable. Real Madrid never played all that well. The quiet leadership style of Carlo Ancelotti is effective, but there are times where the players, they need a little more coaxing of this Real Madrid team recently. It seems like they're just coasting a little bit. You are Chelsea. What can you do back at Stamford Bridge in the second leg? The difference here between Thomas Tuchel and Frank Lampard was Tuchel came in to inject this side with some pace, to inject this side with some energy, to inject this side with some tactical intelligence. Frank Lampard has kind of put something together here, but I never really get the feeling that they're any better off, at least on the pitch, than they would have been with Graham Potter if the players had invested in Graham Potter and been told, this is our guy. So with that, again, we come back to the conclusion that this is now a PR exercise rather than a footballing exercise for Chelsea at the end of this season. It's good they can put in these great results. It's good they can bring on a Mason Mount late. It's good that they can have such a rotatable squad. Conor Gallagher coming on. In fact, Lampard's substitutions kind of confused me. Some of his tactical ideas kind of confused me. Some of the ways they chose to play Real Madrid kind of confused me. Real Madrid are a very adaptable side. They work you out. They sort of fondle you all over until they work out what your shape is, and then they just sort of bang, and you're out. That's what Benzema is there for. He scored his 90th goal in the Champions League this evening. He is incredibly impressive. And with that, you kind of see what Chelsea are lacking, right? They're lacking some of these focal points within the team. Real Madrid have very clear focal points. Focal points that even when you look at them, you go, hey, we should try and stop that. But you can't. Or at least you try to and you can't, right? So I don't know if the money that Chelsea have invested so far has got them anyone, and I mean anyone, maybe Enzo Fernandez at a push, who is at the level of a Vinicius Jr., a Benzema, a Kroos, a Modric, even a Rafael Varane or a Casemiro, or people have left Real Madrid recently, or I want to say a Militao. So maybe they've got prospects for the future. In fact, their squad skews very, very young. In fact, all of the players are pretty much, who they're not going to get rid of this summer, you wouldn't expect them to move on at some point, are all approaching their peak age now. Maybe they'll play their way into it. Maybe the next manager will get that kind of benefit. I'm not saying that all the future is terrible, but in the moment, what we're evaluating doesn't feel great for Chelsea. In this moment, what we've got isn't good enough. And they're going to miss out on Champions League unless they get a great result in the second leg. And they will fall behind other sides, at least temporarily. Now, next season, that might be good. They might be able to concentrate on just doing something in the league. And that will be great. Arsenal style almost, right? But at the same time, Chelsea don't want to be that. Real Madrid are the big glamorous club of Spain. Chelsea want to be the big glamorous club of England. They're not quite there yet. But they've got some good lessons they can learn from this from this Real Madrid team. And weirdly, I still get like weird Carlo Ancelotti sort of, he should come back to Chelsea, steady the ship for 1, maybe 2 seasons, give them some time to just put some pieces together, be adaptable, be smart, teach them some pragmatism, give them some practical ways to work out games. And essentially similar to when another manager comes in and builds on the back of something good. Say a previous manager has had some good defense and another manager builds on the back of that. And a manager has had some good attack, another manager comes and builds on the back of that. Carlo Ancelotti lays a basis for the next manager to build from, potentially. I mean, you do see other managers who come in because it's not Carlo, other players don't react so well. So maybe you set yourself up for a fall, but you kind of get my point here. Like, you want someone who's going to lay a basis. The problem being at the moment, you're not getting that with Frank Lampard. What you're getting is kind of quite basic training, quite basic tactics. The players look a little bit lost out there. There are times where they are in a formation. I actually felt when Ben Chilwell went off the pitch, the team's almost better because they didn't have to play in that kind of fixed way that they had before. It was much more like, hey, we can play as ourselves now, not necessarily in this tactical way because we can change things. We'll be deeper, we'll break. I have to be a bit smarter now as a player because we've only got 10 men, so I have to think a little bit more about the shapes, where I'm going, where I'm passing the ball, all these kind of things. And I felt that Chelsea almost looked a bit, not better, but like a bit more engaged. Enzo Fernandez still doesn't fully look, he looks fully engaged, but he doesn't look fully embedded within the team. I love him as a player. I love his kind of engagement. But Real Madrid worked Chelsea out very quickly. In fact, it felt a little bit too easy to get that first goal. There was that ball over the top, the ball across from Vinicius, and just a tap in for someone like a Benzema. So what I'm saying is make yourself difficult to work out. Give the players, the intelligent players you've got, the tactical freedom to be able to express themselves and to be able to work things out for themselves. At least if you're Frank Lampard, treat this as a let's get holistically better rather than literally finishing better than we are. Is this a Frank Lampard exercise or is this a Chelsea exercise? And can those two things come together to make one big exercise that is like PRFC, which is what I feel they currently are? I still enjoy Enzo. I think he's a great player. I love his energy. I love his commitment. I love how he shouts at other players. I love that he plays that 6 and then every now and again rotates a little bit forward. I just don't know if they fully know who their best front line is right now. And I think that really hampers them. Equally, I don't know if they fully know who their best back line is. So I also think that hampers them. But let me know. I'm only theorising here. What do you Chelsea fans think? What do other fans think from the outside? I'm looking forward to hearing from you. And I'll chat to you in a little while. Probably tomorrow because I do daily uploads. Much love. See you in a little while. Bye-bye.